Hey guys, tonight we're going to freeze. Well, not literally, I hope, but we're going to transport ourselves to a place where the air is so sharp it feels like swallowing glass, and the sun has decided to take a few months off. We are heading to the high Arctic to sit on a reindeer skin inside a house made of snow, and we're going to do something incredibly simple and incredibly slow. We are going to make a stew. You might not think watching meat boil is an adventure, but out here, where a single mistake can turn you into a human popsicle within minutes, making dinner is an act of defiance against the elements. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel, and it proves that you have the patience of a hunter waiting at a breathing hole. Also, I'm curious. Tell me in the comments what the temperature is where you are right now. Are you sweating in the tropics? Or are you shivering along with me? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing on the edge of the world. It is the middle of the polar night, a period where the sun refuses to rise above the horizon. It's not pitch black, though. It's a deep, bruised blue, illuminated by a moon that looks uncomfortably close to the earth, and a blanket of stars so bright they look like they might fall on you. The temperature is hovering around minus 40 degrees. At this temperature, the scales of Celsius and Fahrenheit meet and agree that it is simply too cold to be alive. You are wearing a parka made of caribou skin. The fur is facing inward against your body, and a second layer faces outward. This is a brilliant piece of engineering. Caribou hair is hollow, like a tiny drinking straw. This traps air inside the hair shaft itself, creating a layer of insulation that modern synthetic fabrics struggle to match. In fact, if you fall into the water wearing this, the jacket is so buoyant it acts as a life vest. You feel like a walking marshmallow, stiff and bulky, but you are warm. You take a step. The snow under your mucklucks doesn't crunch. It squeaks. It sounds like styrofoam rubbing together. That is the sound of extreme cold. The moisture has been freeze-dried out of the air, making the atmosphere incredibly clear. You can see for miles, or you could, if there was anything to see. But there's only the vast, undulating white sheet of the tundra, broken only by the jagged ridges of pressure ice pushed up from the frozen ocean. You are not alone, though. Ahead of you, a team of sled dogs is curled up in the snow, their tails wrapped over their noses to trap their breath. They look like boulders. They are waiting, and standing near a low, domed mound of snow is your host. Let's call him Nanook. He is waving at you with a mitten that is the size of a boxing glove. Historians and anthropologists are still arguing about the exact timeline of the Thule migration, the ancestors of the modern Inuit, and how they replaced the earlier Dorset culture. Some say it was a violent conquest. Others say the Dorset simply couldn't adapt to a warming period that ruined their ice hunting, while the Thule had superior technology, like the bow drill and the dog sled. Standing here in the blue twilight, looking at the emptiness, it's hard to imagine anyone fighting over this land. It feels like there is enough nothingness for everyone. You exhale and a cloud of steam billows out, instantly crystallizing on your eyelashes. You have to be careful not to breathe too heavily into your scarf, or it will freeze into a sheet of ice against your face. You are currently learning the first rule of the Arctic: moisture management. Sweat is death. If you run, you sweat. If you sweat, your clothes get wet. When you stop, the wet clothes freeze and you get hypothermia. So, you move deliberately. You walk slow. You approach the snow mound. It looks deceptively small from the outside. This is an igloo, or igloo in the Inuktitut language. It is a spiral of cut snow blocks, a masterpiece of compression forces. But here is a weird little fact you might not know. You don't just walk into an igloo. If there was a door, the wind would blow it open and kill everyone inside. Instead, Nanook points to a hole in the ground. You have to go down to go in. It's a tunnel dug into the snowpack, leading under the wall of the house. You drop to your knees. The snow presses in on you. It's a bit claustrophobic, like crawling into a wombat burrow. You shuffle forward on your elbows and knees, dragging your pack behind you. The tunnel is long, maybe 3 or 4 meters. This is the cold trap. Because cold air is heavy, it settles in this tunnel, while the warm air inside the igloo rises and stays trapped in the living space. You are literally crawling through a filter that separates life from death. As you reach the end of the tunnel, you see a soft, golden glow above you. You push yourself up through the entrance hole in the floor and emerge into the main chamber. The wind stops. The biting cold vanishes. You are inside. You pull yourself up from the cold trap, shaking the loose snow from your shoulders like a dog coming in from the rain. Except here the rain is frozen dust. You stand up, or rather, you hunch over slightly, because the ceiling of the igloo is a perfect dome, but it's not exactly cathedral height. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight. It's the sound, or the lack of it. Outside, the wind was a constant, high-pitched whine, a physical pressure against your ears. Inside, it is dead silent. Snow is an acoustic insulator. It absorbs sound waves better than the most expensive recording studio foam. Your heavy breathing sounds loud. The rustle of your parka sounds like a landslide. You feel like you've stepped into a library at the end of the universe. The second thing you notice is the light. The walls are glowing. The blocks of snow that make up the dome are translucent. And even though it is dark outside, the moonlight filters through the snow, turning the walls a deep, ethereal blue. But the primary light source comes from a small, flickering flame in the center of the room. It casts dancing, golden shadows against the white spiral ceiling, making the whole room feel like the inside of a giant hollowed-out pearl. You look around. The interior is surprisingly organized. It is not just a pile of snow. There's a raised platform taking up the back half of the circle. This is the sleeping bench. It is elevated about 2 feet off the floor. This takes advantage of a basic law of physics. Heat rises. The coldest air sits in the floor pit where you just emerged, while the warm air generated by bodies and the lamp hovers up here on the platform. You climb up onto the bench. It is covered in layers of furs. Thick, shaggy muskox hides on the bottom for insulation, and softer caribou skins on top for comfort. You sit down. It is shockingly comfortable. You are sitting on a bed of ice, covered in skin, inside a house made of frozen water, yet you feel a primal sense of safety. Here is a cold, hard fact about igloo construction that often gets overlooked. The snow has to be specific. You can't just make an igloo out of the fluffy stuff you find in your driveway. The Inuit have dozens of words for snow, and for this, they need avik, snow that has been wind-packed into a solid, structural mass. It has to be cut with a bone knife or a saw. If you use the wrong snow, the blocks will crumble or worse, melt and drip on your head. As you settle in, you notice the smell. It's a distinct, earthy aroma. It smells of singed moss, raw meat, wet fur, and a faint, sweet metallic scent. It is the smell of a carnivorous life. There is no pine-scented candle. It is the smell of survival. You watch Nanook moving around the small space. He moves with an efficiency that makes you feel clumsy. He doesn't bump into the walls. He doesn't knock things over. He is taking off his outer parka. You realize it is actually quite warm in here. Your body heat, combined with the insulation of the snow, can bring the temperature inside up to around freezing or even higher, while it is minus 40 degrees outside. That doesn't sound warm to a modern city dweller, but the difference of 40 degrees is the difference between life and death. You unbuckle your heavy coat. This brings us to a topic that archaeologists and anthropologists are still arguing about: the seasonality of the igloo. For a long time, Victorian explorers assumed the Inuit lived in snow houses year-round. We now know that was a misconception. The igloo was primarily a travel shelter or a temporary winter home. In the summer, they lived in skin tents, and in the winter, many groups built semi-subterranean sod houses made of whalebone and turf. The pure snow igloo is an icon, but it was often just a holiday home or the hunting cabin of the north. You run your hand along the wall next to you. The surface is glazed with a thin layer of ice. This is caused by the interior heat melting the inner surface slightly during the day, which then refreezes at night. This process, called sintering, actually strengthens the dome over time, turning it from a stack of blocks into a solid ceramic-like shell. You are sitting inside a piece of ice pottery. There is a small ventilation hole cut into the roof, a chimney. Without it, the carbon monoxide from the lamp would kill you in your sleep. You watch a tiny wisp of steam escape through it. carrying your breath out to join the stars. Nanook smiles at you. His face is weathered, dark brown from a lifetime of UV radiation reflecting off the snow. He gestures to the center of the room. It is time to start the engine of this house. It is time to light the Kullik. You lean forward, intrigued. You thought the fire was already lit, but you realize that was just a small pilot flame. Now, the real work begins. You are staring at the Kullik. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing more than a shallow, crescent-shaped rock, perhaps a birdbath that broke in half. But you are looking at the technological heart of the Arctic. Without this object, human life at this latitude would be impossible. It is the stove, the furnace, the light bulb, and the dryer, all in one piece of carved soapstone. Nanook places a lamp on a small stand of ice blocks in front of the sleeping platform. The stone is black with age and grease, smooth as glass. Soapstone, or steatite, is used because it is soft enough to carve, but crucially, it holds heat incredibly well without cracking. A regular rock would explode if you kept a fire in it for 6 months. Soapstone just gets cozy. You watch as he prepares the fuel. There is no wood here. You haven't seen a tree for 300 miles. The fuel is fat, specifically seal blubber or whale blubber. Nanook pulls a chunk of frozen blubber from a skin bag. It looks like a slab of hard, white butter. He uses a wooden mallet to pound it against a rock. Thwack, thwack. He is crushing the cell walls of the fat to release the oil. This is a liquefaction process. If he just threw the solid chunk in the lamp, it wouldn't burn. He needs the oil to flow. He places the pounded blubber into the hollow of the lamp. As the stone warms up, the fat will melt into a clear, golden liquid. But you can't just light a pool of oil. You need a wick. This is the part that fascinates you. He reaches into a pouch and pulls out a handful of what looks like dried fluff. It is Arctic cotton grass, or perhaps dried moss. He carefully arranges the fluff along the straight edge of the lamp. He rolls it between his fingers, creating a thin, uniform line of tinder. This is an art form. If the wick is too thick, it smokes and smells like burning tires. If it's too thin, the flame is weak. It has to be perfect. He takes a small stick, dips it in the existing pilot flame, and touches it to the wick. The transformation is magical. The flame doesn't shoot up. It spreads across a line of moss like a slow, glowing zipper. Within seconds, you have a ridge of fire about 10 inches long, burning steady and bright. It looks less like a campfire and more like the gas burner on a modern stove, linear and controlled. Nanook uses a tool called a takudi, a hook-shaped stick, to tend the lamp. He gently pats the moss, shaping the flame, trimming off the charred bits. It is a meditative action. He is gardening the fire. Here is a weird little fact about the Kullik. It was traditionally the woman's domain. In Inuit culture, the woman was the keeper of the flame. It was her responsibility to keep the lamp burning 24 hours a day. If the lamp went out, the igloo would freeze, the clothes wouldn't dry, and the family would be in darkness. It was considered a bad omen and a failure of household management. Nanook is tending it now because he is the host and you are the guest, but usually his wife would be the engineer of this machine. The heat radiating from the lamp is instant. It's not the aggressive, roasting heat of a wood fire. It's a soft, radiant warmth. You feel it on your face. The light changes too. It becomes brighter, a warm yellow that pushes back the blue shadows in the corners. There is an ongoing academic discussion about the health impacts of these lamps. Some bioanthropologists argue that the constant inhalation of particulate matter from burning oil in enclosed spaces caused significant respiratory issues in ancient populations. However, others argue that a well-tended Kullik burns remarkably clean, producing mostly water vapor and carbon dioxide, unlike a wood fire that chokes you with smoke. Watching Nanook tend the wick, ensuring there isn't a single wisp of black smoke, you tend to side with the clean burning theory. It smells faintly oily, but not unpleasant, like a frying pan that has been used for years. You watch the oil bubble gently at the edge of the wick. This is the only moving thing in the room. It is hypnotic. You realize that this lamp is the clock of the igloo. You measure time not in hours, but in how much blubber has melted. We will leave when the lamp is half empty. Is a valid measurement of time. Nanook looks at you and points to the pot hanging above the lamp. It's empty. A fire is useless without something to cook. But before you can cook, you need the most basic ingredient of all, which is currently in solid form all around you. You need water. And getting water in a frozen desert is more complicated than turning a tap. You might assume that getting water in the Arctic is the easiest job on the planet. After all, you're literally living inside a block of frozen water, sitting on frozen water and walking on frozen water. Just grab a handful of snow and throw it in the pot, right? Wrong. If you do that, Nanook will look at you with deep disappointment. You watch as he picks up a specific knife, a snow knife made of bone or antler, and turns toward the pile of ice blocks stacked near the entrance. These aren't snow blocks like the walls. They are clear, bluish ice. He chips off a chunk. It shatters with a sound like breaking glass. Here's the physics problem. Snow is mostly air. If you fill a pot with fluffy snow and melt it, you will end up with about an inch of water and a lot of disappointment. You would have to refill the pot 20 times to get enough for a stew. That wastes time, and more importantly, it wastes fuel. Every minute the lamp is burning to melt air bubbles is a minute of blubber wasted. So, you don't melt snow, you melt ice. Specifically, old ice. Nanook prefers ice from a freshwater lake that has frozen deep or multi-year ice. Fresh sea ice is salty, obviously, but here is a fascinating and weird fact. Old sea ice loses its salt. If sea ice survives the summer melt and freezes again, the brine pockets migrate downward and drain out, leaving the ice fresh and drinkable. Nanook knows exactly which blue chunk is salty and which is sweet just by looking at the color and the texture. You, on the other hand, would probably brew a pot of seawater tea. He places the chunk of ice into the pot, suspended over the kullik. The pot isn't sitting on the flame. It hangs from a drying rack made of driftwood or bone positioned above a lamp. This is slow cooking in its most literal sense. The flame is gentle. The ice block doesn't hiss or steam. It just sweats. It slowly weeps water into the bottom of the vessel. You are witnessing the daily grind of mining for water. In many Arctic accounts, explorers complain that half their day is spent just making enough water to drink. Dehydration is a massive risk here. The air is so dry that you lose moisture just by breathing. You are constantly thirsty, but the cold suppresses your thirst mechanism. You have to force yourself to drink. While the ice slowly drips, you look at the water that is already pooled. It is crystal clear. It is perhaps the purest water on Earth, locked away long before the Industrial Revolution, free of microplastics and pollutants. There's a historical controversy surrounding the lead poisoning theory of the Franklin expedition, the famous British voyage that vanished in the 1840s searching for the Northwest Passage. While most people blame the lead solder in their tin food, some researchers have argued that the lead actually came from the specialized distillation systems they used to melt ice and desalinate water on the ships. They poisoned themselves trying to stay hydrated. Nanook's method is safer. Just a rock, a flame, and a piece of a frozen lake. You reach out and touch the side of the hanging pot. It is barely warm yet. This doesn't take a while. You realize that instant gratification is a concept that doesn't exist here. You want a drink? Wait 20 minutes. You want dinner? Wait 4 hours. The Arctic imposes a rhythm of patience on you. You can't fight it. If you try to rush the lamp, you'll smoke up the igloo. If you try to rush the ice, you'll run out of fuel. You just have to sit and watch the solid turn into liquid, drop by drop. Nanook hands you a cup, a Kalanick made of muskox horn. He dips it in and hands it to you. You take a sip. It is shockingly cold, sending a shiver down your spine, but it tastes like nothing. It tastes like cold void. It is delicious. He adds another chunk of ice to the pot. The water level is rising. Now that we have the solvent, we need the solute. We need the vessel to be ready for the main event. You look at the pot itself. It's not metal. It's not ceramic. It's a piece of the earth, carved by hand, and it has a story of its own. You lean in closer to inspect the cooking vessel, swinging gently above the flame. It is rectangular with rounded corners, carved from a single block of dark, grayish-black stone. This is a kusik. It is made of soapstone, the same material as the lamp. This pot is ugly in the most beautiful way. It is lumpy, scarred, and greasy. It doesn't shine like stainless steel. It absorbs the light. But this object is an heirloom. Soapstone is soft enough to carve with antler or harder rocks, but it is incredibly durable against thermal shock. You could drop this in the snow at minus 40 degrees, and then put it over fire, and it wouldn't crack. Try doing that with a Le Creuset. You run your finger along the rim. The stone feels greasy. This is seasoned soapstone. Just like a cast iron skillet in a hipster's kitchen, a soapstone pot improves with age. The fats from 1,000 seals and caribou have polymerized into the pores of the rock, creating a natural non-stick surface. You are looking at the non-stick technology of the Neolithic. Here is a weird little fact. Soapstone has a high specific heat capacity. This means it takes a long time to heat up, but once it's hot, it stays hot for hours. It is a thermal battery. Even if the lamp flickers or the wind blows through the door, the pot keeps the stew simmering. It is the original slow cooker. In fact, modern slow cookers are just trying to mimic the physics of this rock. Nanook treats the pot with reverence. He wipes the rim with a piece of skin. You get the sense that this pot is more valuable than the igloo itself. The igloo will melt in the spring. The pot will last for generations. This brings us to a fascinating archaeological debate, the soapstone trade network. Archaeologists have found soapstone from specific quarries in Newfoundland and the Coronation Gulf traded thousands of miles away across the Arctic. Some scholars argue that these heavy pots were the most valuable currency of the North, traded like gold bars. A good pot could buy you a wife, a team of dogs, or a sled. Others argue that the trade was more ritualistic, a way to build alliances between distant tribes. Either way, you are looking at a very expensive piece of kitchenware. The water in the pot is finally starting to steam. It's not boiling yet. Boiling is a waste of energy, but it is hot. Nanook nods. The stage is set. He reaches for a bag lying in the corner. It is stiff and frozen. He drags it closer to the light. It's the meat, but it's not a neat little styrofoam package of ground beef. It is a leg. A very large, very frozen leg. You look at the meat. It is dark, almost purple. This is the reality of the Arctic diet. There are no vegetables, well, mostly. There is no bread. There is only animal. And tonight, the menu is ambiguous. It looks like seal, but it could be caribou. In the dim light, meat is meat. Nanook pulls out a board, a flat piece of driftwood. Driftwood is precious here. It traveled thousands of miles on the ocean currents from the forests of Siberia or Canada to wash up on these treeless shores. Using a piece of wood as a cutting board is a flex. It says, "I am rich enough to cut on wood." He places a frozen leg on the board. He doesn't look like a chef preparing a meal. He looks like a surgeon preparing for an operation. The mood in the igloo shifts slightly. It becomes more serious. In a culture where starvation is a historical constant, handling food is a sacred act. You don't just toss it in. You respect the life that is about to sustain yours. He picks up a tool. It is not a chef's knife. It is a fan-shaped blade with a handle on top. The ulu. But he doesn't hand it to you yet. First, he has to butcher the frozen limb. He taps the knife against the meat. It rings like wood. "We wait," he says. "You can't cut rock-hard meat. You have to let the warmth of the room soften the outer layer, just enough to slice it. So you wait again. You stare at the leg. You realize that this leg used to run across the tundra. It had a heartbeat. Now it is going to be your body heat. The connection between the animal and the human is direct here. There is no factory, no supermarket, no plastic wrap to hide the truth. You are eating the landscape. Nanook comes a low tune. The water in the soapstone pot ripples gently. The steam rises and hits the cold ceiling, vanishing. The anticipation builds. You are hungrier than you have ever been in your life. The coal burns calories like a furnace. Your body is screaming for fat. And that dark, frozen leg looks like the most delicious thing in the universe. The leg is softened. Not much, but enough. The outer millimeter of the flesh yields slightly to the pressure of Nanook's thumb. It is time to butcher. Nanook moves the meat closer to the lamp. You see now that it is seal meat, Natick. You can tell by the dark, rich color of the flesh and the thick layer of blubber still attached to the skin. Seal meat is the staple of the winter. It is incredibly high in iron, which gives it that dark color and it keeps the blood warm. He begins to cut. But he doesn't slice it into tidy cubes like you would for a beef stew. He cuts it into large, fist-sized chunks. He leaves the fat on. In a modern kitchen, you might trim the fat to be healthy. Here, cutting off the fat would be suicide. The fat is the fuel. It is the calories you need to keep your internal furnace burning at 37 degrees Celsius when the world outside is minus 40. You watch his hands. They are scarred and thick, but his movements are delicate. He cuts around the bone, separating the muscle groups. He doesn't hack. He disassembles the animal. Here is a weird/cool fact. In traditional Inuit culture, there are strict taboos about mixing land animals and sea animals. This is a concept of purjak. You generally shouldn't cook caribou, land, and seal sea in the same pot, or at least not in the same season, depending on specific elders' teachings. It insults the goddess Edna. If you mix them, she might get angry and send a storm or hide the animals. Nanook is careful. This is a seal pot tonight. The caribou parka you are wearing is fine, but it stays on your back, not in the stew. As he drops the chunks of meat into the water stops steaming. The cold meat sucks the heat out of the pot instantly. The thermal battle begins again. The lamp has to work harder. Nanook leans forward and adjusts the wick, making the flame slightly higher. He hands you a piece of raw liver. It is warm from his hand, but cold in the center. He gestures for you to eat it. Now, you hesitate. Sushi is one thing. Raw seal liver in an igloo is another. But you take it. This is the appetizer. And biologically, it is a multivitamin bomb. Since you aren't eating oranges or spinning class smoothies, you need vitamin C to avoid scurvy. Raw liver is packed with vitamin C. If you cook it, the vitamins break down. So, the Inuit paradoxically avoid scurvy in a land without fruit by eating raw meat. You put it in your mouth. It tastes metallic, sweet, and smooth. It melts on your tongue. It's surprisingly good. You feel a strange rush of energy. That's the iron hitting your system. There is an academic controversy regarding the Inuit ketogenic diet. For years, nutritionists were baffled at how the Inuit had zero heart disease despite eating a diet that was 75% fat and protein. It defied the food pyramid. Some researchers argued they had genetic adaptations to processed fat. Others argue it was a type of fat that protected them. Recent studies suggest a specific genetic mutation helps them process fatty acids for energy. Basically, Nanook is a biological hybrid engine designed to run on blubber. You, with your carb-adapted metabolism, might struggle a bit, but tonight, you're going keto. Nanook drops the bone into the pot. The marrow inside is the prize. When the stew is done, that bone will be cracked open and the marrow sucked out. It is the butter of the Arctic. The pot is now full. The water level is just below the rim. The dark meat looks stark against the gray stone. It doesn't look like a gourmet meal yet. It looks like a biology experiment. But as the water begins to warm up again, a gray scum rises to the surface. Nanook schemes it off with a spoon made of muskox horn. He flicks the scum into the corner of the igloo. Even the waste is managed. Later, the dogs might get that. Nothing is truly wasted. He looks at you and picks up the ulu again. He hands it to you. He points to a slab of blubber. He wants you to help. He wants you to cut the additional fuel for the lamp, or perhaps some fat to add to the pot. You take the knife. It feels heavy and awkward in your hand. The handle is made of antler, polished smooth by decades of use. The blade is steel, likely repurposed from an old saw blade or traded from whalers. Before steel, it would have been slate or jade. You are about to learn that your motor skills are completely wrong for this tool. You hold it like a hammer. Nanook shakes his head. He gently corrects your grip. The ulu is not a sawing tool. It is a pushing tool. You rock it. You are holding the ulu, the crescent-shaped woman's knife. Though men use it too for specific tasks. It feels alien. In your culture, knives are long and straight, extensions of the finger. The ulu is an extension of the fist. The handle is directly above the blade, which means the force comes straight down from your shoulder, not your wrist. It is ergonomically brilliant for cutting through tough hide and thick blubber, but only if you know how to drive it. You try to cut the slab of fat Nanook handed you. You saw back and forth. It jiggles. It doesn't cut. You feel like a toddler with plastic scissors. Nanook chuckles, a low, rumbling sound that vibrates in the small room. He reaches over and guides your hand. Push, his gesture says. Rock. You apply downward pressure and rock the curve blade. Esichenke. It slices through the blubber like it's warm cheese. The leverage is incredible. You realize why this design hasn't changed for 4,000 years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You cut a few cubes of fat. Nanook takes one and drops it into the pot. Flavor, he seems to say. He takes another and puts it near the lamp. Fuel. The line between food and fuel is non-existent here. You are burning the seal to cook the seal to feed the human who hunts the seal. It is a perfect, closed circle of energy. Here's a weird fact about the ulu. It's not just for kitchen work. It is the Arctic Swiss Army knife. It is used to cut hair, scrape skins for tanning, trim blocks of snow for the igloo, and even cut a child's umbilical cord. It is the tool of life. In some burials, women are found with their ulus, because how could you navigate the afterlife without one? You hand the knife back to Nanook. He wipes the grease on his boot. Clean. The pot is starting to make noise now. A low, gentle bubbling sound. Blup, blup. It is not a rolling boil. A rolling boil would destroy the nutrients and toughen the meat. This is a poach. The Inuit prefer their meat ujuk, boiled, but often barely cooked by Western standards. Rare doesn't quite cover it. It's warmed through. This preserves the enzymes and vitamins. There is a linguistic controversy among anthropologists about the word Eskimo. It is widely believed to mean eaters of raw meat in the Cree language, which was considered derogatory. However, modern linguists argue this might be a false etymology, and it actually meant she bakers of snowshoes. Regardless, the preferred term is Inuit, the people, and they definitely eat raw meat, but they also love a good hot stew. The stew you are making is comfort food. It's what you eat when you come in from the cold and need to thaw your soul. You watch the steam curl off the surface of the water. It carries a scent now. It smells rich, gamey, and oceanic. It smells like iron and sea salt. It's not a fishy smell. It's a mammal smell. It reminds you of beef that has been marinated in seaweed. Nanook reaches for another pouch. This one is smaller. He opens it and reveals something that looks like dry black pebbles. Crowberries. You are surprised. You thought plants were a myth up here. But in the short, explosive summer, the tundra is covered in low bush berries. The Inuit harvest them by the bucket load and freeze them in seal oil to preserve them for the winter. These are the Arctic grapes. He tosses a handful into the stew. They bob on the surface like dark eyes. They will burst as they cook, releasing a tart, sweet juice that cuts through the heavy grease of the seal fat. It is a sophisticated culinary move. Acid balances fat. Nanook is a chef. He also pulls out something green and crinkled, dried seaweed, or perhaps distinct leaves of mountain sorrel. He crumbles it into the pot. It rehydrates instantly, turning into emerald ribbons. Now the stew has color. It has black meat, white fat, purple berries, and green leaves. It looks like a witch's brew, but a healthy one. You realize that foraging here implies knowing exactly where to dig under 3 feet of snow to find a plant you marked in August. It requires a memory map of the land that is incredibly detailed. If you forget where the berry patch is, you don't get dessert. The ingredients are all in. The lid goes on, or rather, a flat stone is placed partially over the top to keep the heat in, but let the steam escape. Now comes the hardest part of the recipe, the waiting. Cooking at this altitude and with this heat source is a lesson in thermodynamics. The stone pot absorbs the heat slowly and releases it into the water. You cannot rush it. If you try to make the fire bigger, you risk cracking the lamp or running out of oil. You have to submit to the time of the Kulik. Nanook leans back against the snow wall. He crosses his legs. He looks at you. There is no smartphone to scroll. There is no TV. There is just you, him, the fire, and the pot. It is time for the entertainment. It is time for the stories. You look at the berries floating in the pot. and your mind drifts to how they got there. It is hard to imagine, sitting in this white freezer, that this land ever blooms. But Nanook starts to mime a story, or perhaps he speaks a few words of Inuktitut that you intuitively understand through his gestures. He tells you about August. In August, the sun never sets. It just circles the sky like a lazy golden bird. The snow melts, revealing the barren grounds, which are actually a riot of life. The tundra explodes with wild flowers, purple saxifrage, yellow poppies, white mountain avens. And the berries, he pantomimes picking them. The women and children go out with buckets. They pick crowberries, cloudberries, and blueberries. But they don't make jam. Sugar is a colonial import. Instead, they store them in pokes, sealskin bags filled with blubber. The fat seals the berries and prevents them from fermenting or getting freezer burn. It is nature's canning jar. The seaweed in the pot came from the tidal zone. In the summer at low tide, the women go down the rocks and gather the long, salty ribbons of kelp. They lay them out on the rocks to dry in the 24-hour sun until they are crisp like chips. You realize that this stew is a time capsule. You are eating the summer sunlight captured in the berries and the leaves, released now in the dark heart of winter to keep you alive. It is a profound form of energy transfer. There's a weird fact about Arctic plants. They are dwarfs. The trees here, the Arctic willows, are only a few inches tall. They crawl along the ground to escape the wind. If you stood in an Arctic forest, the trees would barely touch your ankles, but their roots are massive, anchoring them into the permafrost. You're eating the leaves of trees that have been fighting the ice for decades just to grow 2 inches. Nanook stirs the pot. The smell of the berries mixing with the meat is unique. It's sweet and savory. He points to the wall of the igloo. You see a small stain of soot. He wipes it away. He is meticulous. If the soot builds up, it drips. If it drips, it ruins the furs. How long, you ask? He holds up 4 fingers. For hours? For distinct movements of the moon? It doesn't matter. It's done when it's done. The stew is barely bubbling. This low temperature cooking breaks down the collagen in the tough seal muscle into gelatin. If you boiled it hard, the muscle fibers would contract and squeeze out all the moisture, leaving you with a rubber boot to eat. By keeping it below the boil, the meat becomes tender. It is sous vide before sous vide existed. You notice something else about the room. It is getting humid. The steam from the pot and your breath is raising the humidity. The walls are glistening. This is dangerous. If it gets too wet, your clothes will dampen. Nanook reaches up and unclogs the ventilation hole in the roof slightly with a stick. A rush of cold air sucks the steam out. He balances the atmosphere like an HVAC technician. The academic world is still arguing about the Dorset disappearance. The Dorset people live here for thousands of years before the Inuit. They didn't have bows and arrows, and they might not have had dogs. They were incredibly strong, hunting walrus with harpoons. But they vanished around 1300 AD. Did they starve? Did the Inuit wipe them out? Or did they retreat into the myths, becoming the Tunit, the shy giant of Inuit legend? Sitting here, eating the food of the land they once walked, you feel their ghosts. Maybe they're the wind outside. Nanook smiles and hands you a piece of dried fish, Arctic char, to chew on while you wait. It is rock hard. It's like chewing on a piece of plywood that tastes like salmon jerky. It helps pass the time. Your jaw muscles get a workout. This is why Inuit skulls are often studied by anthropologists. The jaw muscles are incredibly developed from a lifetime of chewing tough leather and dried meat. You are getting a facial workout. You chew. You watch the flame. You wait. The stew gurgles. The world outside is frozen, but in here, in this tiny bubble of light, life is simmering. The waiting continues. You have chewed your dried fish into submission. The pot is now sending up a steady column of steam that smells less like raw animal and more like dinner. You are observing the alchemy of the Arctic. The fat, the blubber chunks Nanook added, has completely rendered. It is now a layer of golden oil floating on top of the dark broth. This oil is crucial. It acts as a lid, trapping the heat in the water below, and it seals in the flavor. In a French kitchen, a chef might skim this fat off to make a clean consommé. Here, skimming the fat would be madness. You want to drink that oil. It is pure energy. It is what will keep you warm when you go back outside. You watch the bubbles push the berries around. The berries have slumped, giving up their purple color to the broth. The seaweed has unfurled completely. There's a weird fact about soapstone pots. They can alkalize the food slightly. Some studies suggest that the magnesium in the stone leaches into the food, acting as a supplement. You are essentially taking a multivitamin pill made of rock. Nanook picks up a ladle. It is made from the horn of a muskox. Muskoxen are those prehistoric-looking shaggy beasts that form defensive circles when threatened. Their horns make perfect scoops. He dips it in and pulls out a piece of meat to check the tenderness. He pokes it with the ulu. It's still too bouncy. He drops it back in. Plop. Not yet, his face says. You lay back on the furs. The heat is making you drowsy. This is the igloo effect. The combination of the slightly elevated carbon dioxide, the warmth, the white noise of the silence, and the visual monotony puts your brain into a theta state. You are half asleep, half awake. It is the ultimate relaxation. You aren't worrying about your emails. You aren't worrying about the stock market. You are just worrying about the texture of seal meat. Nanook decides it is time to pass the time more actively. He reaches into his pouch and pulls out a loop of sinew, dried tendon string. He holds it up. It is time for a Jerapok. String games. You might remember playing cat's cradle in elementary school, making simple X shapes. That is child's play. Nanook loops the string around his thumbs and fingers. His hands move in a blurred dexterity. Twist, loop, pull, drop. Suddenly, he holds his hands up. The string forms a perfect outline of a caribou. The antlers, the legs. He grunts, moves a finger, and the caribou runs away, dissolving into a new shape. Now it is a dog sled. Now it is a whale. Now it is a man falling through the ice. This is not just a game. It is oral history encoded in geometry. Before writing, the Inuit used these string figures to illustrate stories. This is how the raven stole the sun. He might say, manipulating the string to show the bird, then the sun. It is a flickering, kinetic cinema performed with a piece of gut. There is an academic controversy about the global spread of string games. Anthropologists found that Inuit string figures are almost identical to those found in Navajo tribes in the desert Southwest and Aboriginal tribes in Australia. How? Did they communicate? Or is the human hand and a loop of string just a universal discovery that every culture makes when they are bored? It's a mystery. Nanook hands a string to you. You try. You fumble. You manage to make a knot. He laughs. He takes it back and makes a shape that looks like a pair of goggles. Snow goggles. You watch the shadow of the string figure cast against the curved wall of the igloo by the lamp. It looks like a giant spiderweb. The storytelling is mesmerizing. The pop bubbles in the background, providing the soundtrack. Bloop. Hiss. You realize that patience isn't about waiting for something to happen. It's about finding value in the time in between. The stew will be ready when the string tells the end of the story. The string game is over. Nanook puts the sinew away. The igloo falls silent again. But as your ears adjust to quiet, you realize it's not silent. The earth is talking. You hear a deep, resonant boom from somewhere far below you. It sounds like a cannon going off underwater. You jump. Nanook doesn't flinch. Ice, he whispers. You are camped on the sea ice, or perhaps near a large lake. As the temperature drops further in the night, the ice expands and contracts. It cracks. These aren't little cracks. They are tectonic shifts. The ice is relieving stress. It groans, pings, and thunders. It's a terrifying sound if you aren't used to it. It sounds like the floor is about to open up and swallow you into the Arctic Ocean. But Nanook knows the difference between a growing crack and a breaking crack. This is just the ice singing itself to sleep. Then you hear another sound. Closer. Scratching. Snuffling. It comes from the wall, right behind your head. Something is outside, investigating the smell of the stew. You freeze. Polar bear? If it's a bear, you are in a snow bubble with a seal-scented candle. You are essentially a dumpling. Your host cocks his head. He listens. Then he relaxes. Fox, he signals. An Arctic fox. A tiny, white scavenger hoping for scraps. This brings us to a weird/cool fact. The Arctic fox is the most cold-resistant mammal on Earth. It doesn't even start shivering until the temperature hits minus 70 degrees Celsius. It is a supernatural puffball. It is likely walking around on top of the igloo right now, listening to your heartbeats. Then the main chorus begins. It starts with one low woo-woo from the snowbank outside. Then another joins in. Then 10. The sled dogs. They have woken up. Maybe the fox woke them, or maybe the moon moved. The howling is mournful and melodic. It's not the barking of domestic dogs. It's the song of the wolf. Canadian Inuit dogs are genetically distinct from other breeds. They are working animals, tough as nails. They sleep outside in the snow with no shelter, letting the snow bury them for insulation. Nanook smiles. They sing. The sound penetrates the snow walls, muffled but clear. It is the soundtrack of the North. It feels ancient. It reminds you that you are part of a pack. You are the alpha. Well, Nanook is the alpha, you are the guest. And they are the guardians. If a bear was coming, that song would turn into a chaotic bark of war. The howl is a lullaby that says, "We are watching." There is a controversy in the history of the Arctic about the dog disease of the mid-20th century. In the 1950s and 60s, thousands of Inuit sled dogs died or were killed by authorities, ostensibly for public safety or due to disease. The Inuit argue it was a systematic attempt to force them off the land and into settlements by destroying their transportation. It is a deep scar in the history. But tonight, in this timeless bubble, the dogs are alive, numerous, and singing. The howling fades as quickly as it started. The dogs curl back up. The fox skitters away. The ice booms once more, a final drumbeat. Nanook checks the pot again. The smell is heavier now. The meat is breaking down. The collagen has dissolved. The water has turned into a rich, opaque broth. He takes a spoon and tastes the liquid. He closes his eyes. He smacks his lips. "Mamertuck," he says. "Delicious. It is almost time." The dogs have settled, but the silence inside needs to be filled. Nanook leans forward. He isn't going to tell a story with words this time. He is going to use his breath. He begins to make a sound deep in his throat. Hum, hum, hum. It's rhythmic, guttural, and percussive. He looks at you, inviting you to join, but you have no idea what you are doing. Usually, Katajack or throat singing is performed by two women facing each other, holding each other's arms. It is a vocal game, a contest to see who laughs first or runs out of breath. But men do it too, or chant in similar ways for drum dancing. Nanook creates a beat. It sounds like a saw cutting wood, or a goose honking, or the wind in a ravine. Ha-he-hi. He is inhaling and exhaling with sound. There is no pause for breath because the sound is the breath. It is a circular breathing technique that turns a human respiratory system into a musical instrument. You close your eyes and listen. It is trance-inducing. The sound bounces off the curved snow walls, creating a reverb effect that makes them sound like a synthesizer. Here is a weird fact. The Inuit didn't have many melodic instruments like flutes or violins because it was too scarce to build them and the cold would warp them. So they used the only instrument that didn't freeze, the body. Throat singing is essentially beatboxing, invented thousands of years before hip-hop. The sound he is making mimics the environment. You hear the sound of the sled runners on ice. You hear the sound of the mosquito. You hear the river. There is a historical controversy about the suppression of throat singing. Christian missionaries banned it for decades, calling it demonic or too sensual. It almost went extinct, but it has roared back in recent decades, becoming a symbol of cultural pride. Nanook's performance is an act of resistance. He stops abruptly. He laughs. He is out of breath. The spell breaks, but the room feels warmer. The vibration seems to linger in the snow. He turns back to the pot. The sound of the singing has been replaced by the sound of the stew. It is thick now. The bubbles are slow and viscous. Bloop, bloop. He picks up the ladle. He stirs it deep, scraping the bottom to ensure nothing is sticking. He lifts a chunk of meat. It falls apart off the bone. It is done. The waiting is over. The physics of heat and time have done their work. The tough muscle of the seal has surrendered. Nanook reaches for the bowls. They are not ceramic. They are carved from birch burl or maybe just a deep, hollowed-out piece of scapula bone. He wipes them clean with his thumb. He doesn't serve you yet. There's a protocol. A stew is not just food. It is a distribution of resources. He takes the ulu and fishes out the big pieces of meat, laying them on the wooden board. The steam rises in a glorious cloud, filling the igloo with a scent of savory, fatty richness. It smells like the best pot roast you've never had. He looks at the meat. He looks at you. He is calculating. Who gets the liver? Who gets the ribs? Who gets the broth? You sit up straight. Your stomach growls, a sound so loud it rivals a sled dog's. Nanook grins. It is time to feast. The meat is steaming on the board. The broth is swirling in the pot. Nanook gestures for you to come closer. In this tiny space, that just means leaning forward 3 inches. He picks up the ulu. He cuts a large chunk of meat. He doesn't put it in a bowl. He hands it directly to you. This is the first rule of the Arctic table. Fingers first. Utensils are for broth. Hands are for meat. The meat is hot, scalding hot. You juggle it from one hand to the other, blowing on it. Nanook laughs at your tender fingers. His hands are asbestos. He holds a piece of steaming rib as if it were an ice cube. He takes the best piece, the brisket or the ribs, and places it in front of you. As the guest, you are honored. If there were elders here, they would eat first. If there were children, they would get the softest bits. Nanook takes a flipper or a tougher cut for himself. This is the leadership of the hunter. Feed the tribe first. Eat last. You take a bite. The texture surprises you. It is incredibly tender, falling apart into threads, but has a chewiness to it that beef lacks. It is dense, and the flavor, it is intense. It tastes like the ocean, but meaty. It's rich, dark, and gamey, but the real revelation is the fat. You get a piece with a layer of blubber attached. In your normal life, you might cut the fat off a steak. Here, you crave it. You bite into the blubber. It doesn't taste like gristle. It tastes like butter. It melts in your mouth, coating your tongue in warm, savory oil. Your brain releases a dopamine hit that almost makes you dizzy. Calories. Survival. Nanook pours the broth into the bowls. He hands you one. The broth is dark, almost black from the seal blood and the crowberries. You sip it. It is salty and sweet. It is thick with gelatin. It glues your lips together. It warms you from the inside out. You can feel the heat traveling down your esophagus, hitting your stomach, and radiating out to your frozen toes. It is better than any whiskey. Here is a weird fact about Arctic dining. You sweat. Within 10 minutes of eating, you are sweating. The meat heat kicks in. Digesting this much protein and fat generates a massive amount of internal body heat. You actually have to unzip your parka. You are sitting in an ice house, and you are overheating. Nanook is eating with efficiency. He uses the ulu to slice a piece of meat right in front of his lips, cutting upward. It looks dangerous, like he's about to slice his nose off, but he stops the blade a millimeter from his face every time. It is a dance of steel and lips. He cracks open the bone he saved earlier. He uses the handle of the knife to shatter it. He picks out the marrow. He offers you half. It is pink and soft. You eat it. It tastes like creamy, nutty velvet. You realize that there are no side dishes. There is no bread roll. There is no salad. The meat is the meal. The meat is the vegetable. The meat is the fruit. There is a controversy in nutrition circles about fiber. How do they poop without fiber? The academics ask. The answer is that the connective tissue and the cartilage act as fiber. And the fact that they use every part of the animal keeps the gut microbiome diverse. You're eating a zero-waste meal. The silence of the meal is different from the silence of the waiting. It is the silence of satisfaction. The only sounds are the slurping of broth and the cracking of bones. It is a primal, happy sound. You look at Nanook. His face is shiny with grease. He looks content. The anxiety of the cold has vanished. You are full. You are warm. You are alive. The meal is over. The pot is empty, save for a few dregs of broth, which Nanook pours into a separate bowl for the dogs outside. He will take it to them later. Even the lickings are precious. You sit back, leaning against the curved snow wall. You feel heavy. This is the meat drunk. Your body is diverting all its energy to digestion. Your eyelids feel like they are made of lead. Nanook begins the cleanup. There is no sink. There is no dishwasher. He takes a handful of clean snow from the floor and scrubs the pot. The snow absorbs the grease. He wipes it out with a skin cloth. The pot is clean. The abrasive snow acts like a scouring pad. He tends the lamp again. He lowers the wick. The flame shrinks from a cooking fire to a nightlight. The room dims. The golden glow turns to a soft, amber twilight. The shadows of the drying rack stretch long across the ceiling. You notice the condensation on the ceiling. The heat of the cooking has created a thin layer of water on the inner surface of the dome. If it drips, you get wet. If you get wet, you freeze. Nanook picks up a snow knife and gently scrapes the ceiling, shaving off the wet layer before it can drip. It falls as a fine mist of ice. He is literally shaving the house. Here's a weird fact. An occupied igloo glows in the dark. If you were standing outside on the tundra right now, looking at this mound, it would look like a giant, glowing jellyfish on the ice. The light from the cullet permeates the snow blocks. It is a beacon. In the vast blue darkness of the polar night, these glowing domes are the only sign of humanity. Nanook offers you a drink of cold water to wash down the fat. You accept. The contrast between the hot stew and the ice water is shocking and refreshing. He starts to hum again, a low, quiet tune. He is relaxed. The pressure of survival has lifted for another 12 hours. The belly is full. The lamp is full. The dogs are fed. This is the moment of peace. You look at the tools scattered on the floor. The ulu, the board, the ladle. They are simple tools, unchanged for millennia. You feel a connection to people who sat in this exact spot 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. The technology of the iPhone in your pocket feels irrelevant here. It can't cut meat. It can't melt snow. It is a dead brick. The soapstone lamp is a superior technology. There is an academic discussion about indigenous science. For a long time, Western science dismissed Inuit knowledge as folklore. But now, climatologists are desperate to talk to elders like Nanook. They know that the ice is changing. They know the animals are moving. Nanook knows that the texture of the snow is different this year. He is a walking database of climate change. But tonight, he is just a man picking his teeth with a sliver of bone. You watch the flame of the lamp. It is mesmerizing. It dances on the liquid oil. You realize you have been staring at it for 20 minutes. Your brain is shutting down. The slow TV of the Arctic is just a burning wick, and it is the best show you've ever watched. It is time to sleep. But sleeping in the Arctic is not as simple as lying down. It is a process of deconstruction. Nanook stands up and begins to undress. This shocks you at first. You assume you should sleep in your clothes to stay warm. Wrong. If you sleep in your heavy parka and fur trousers, you will sweat. The moisture will get trapped in the fur. Tomorrow, when you walk out into the minus 40-degree air, that moisture will freeze and your clothes will lose their insulation. You will be wearing a suit of ice armor. So you strip, you take off the heavy outer parka. You take off the trousers. You are left in your underlayers, usually light caribou skin or, in modern times, thermal underwear. Nanook sleeps under a pile of heavy robes. You climb deeper onto the sleeping platform. The furs are incredibly thick. You sink into them. It feels like being hugged by a bear. Nanook arranges the skins over you. He tucks you in. This is not just kindness. It is engineering. He ensures there are no air gaps where the cold air from the floor pit can sneak in. You are sealed. He turns to the lamp one last time. He doesn't put it out. You never put the lamp out completely in winter. He reduces the flame to a tiny blue dot, just enough to keep the temperature above freezing, just enough to keep the pilot light alive for the morning. The room goes almost dark. The walls are no longer glowing gold. They are a dull, milky gray, lit only by the moonlight filtering to the snow from the outside. You hear the wind picking up outside, a gentle whoosh over the dome. The aerodynamics of the igloo shape deflect the wind perfectly. The The harder it blows, the more the snow packs down, making the house stronger. You are safe inside your egg. You think about the stew you just ate. You can still feel the warmth of it in your stomach. It is a furnace that will burn all night, keeping your core temperature stable while you dream. You think about the journey that brought you here. The cold, the hunger, the waiting. It all seems distant now. The world has shrunk to this circle of furs. Nanook murmurs something. Sinalarit. Sleep well. He lies down on his side of the platform. Within seconds, his breathing deepens. He is asleep. The ability to sleep instantly is another survival skill. When you are safe, you rest. You don't lie awake worrying about tomorrow's hunt. You bank to sleep while you can. You wiggle your toes. They are warm. You pull the fur up to your chin. The smell of the seal oil is still in the air, but you don't mind it anymore. It smells like home. You listen to the silence one last time. It is heavy, pressing against your ears, but it is peaceful. There are no sirens, no traffic, no notifications, just the ice, the dogs, and the breathing of the man next to you. You are ready to drift off. The Arctic night is long. It will last for weeks, but you are ready for the long sleep. You are floating now. The line between the waking world and the dream world has dissolved, much like the horizon outside dissolves into the white sky. You are no longer a visitor in a strange land. You are just another warm mammal burrowed into the snow, waiting for the rotation of the earth to bring the sun back. Eventually, in your mind, you replay the sensory loop of the evening. The hiss of the snow knife cutting the ice block, the thwack of the mallet on the blubber, the drip, drip, drip of the water melting into the soapstone pot, the smell of the crowberries bursting in the hot broth. These are simple things. But out here, stripped of all the noise and clutter of your modern life, they feel enormous. You realize that you haven't thought about your job, your bills, or your social media feed for hours. The Arctic has scrubbed your mind clean. It has forced you to focus on the basics. Heat, water, food, shelter. And once those are secured, there is nothing left to do but be content. This is the gift of the North. It is harsh, yes. It is deadly, yes. But it is also incredibly simple. It demands presence. You cannot be anywhere else but here. You feel the weight of the caribou skins pressing down on you. It is a comforting weight, a grounding force. You feel the gentle rise and fall of your own chest. Your breath is slow and steady. Outside, the aurora borealis, the arseniate, might be dancing across the sky, ribbons of green and violet light playing specifically for the foxes and the owls. You can't see them through the snow roof, but you know they are there. The spirits of the sky playing soccer with a walrus skull, as the legends say. You are warm. You are safe. You are full. The lamp flickers one last time in your peripheral vision. A tiny star in your personal galaxy. The dogs outside let out one last, soft whimper in their sleep, dreaming of running across the sea ice. You let go. You let the darkness take you. You sink into the furs, into the silence, into the deep, restorative sleep of the winter. And now, the fire is burned down to its quietest ember. The soapstone pot cools slowly, holding its memory of the heat for hours in the dark. The igloo stands silent and strong against the vast, blue emptiness of the polar night. The wind outside is just a hush, a lullaby singing over the ridges of the ice. You are safe here, tucked deep beneath the layers of time and snow. The cold cannot find you. The worry cannot find you. There is only the warmth of furs and the steady, rhythmic beating of your own heart, slowing down, matching the slow, deep breath of the world around you. Everything is still. The ice is still. The stars are still. You are drifting on a sea of white, floating gently into the velvet darkness. Let your muscles relax completely. Let your jaw loosen. Let your shoulders drop. You are heavy, warm, and deeply at peace. The long night is here to hold you. There is nothing to do but rest. Nothing to do but sleep. The story is over. The stew is eaten. The lamp is low. The end. Good night.